Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church, and I'm here continuing the second week in our discussion from Leviticus. And I'm continuing the discussion here in chapter 23 on the various festivals, the times of celebration, the times of specialness in remembering God. So today, I want to talk about the festival called the Festival of Pentecost or the Festival of the Harvest. This is 50 days after the previous feast. And in the Christian church, we know Pentecost is the day that the Spirit was given to us. But let's don't get too carried away with that. Let's just read a little bit first. From Leviticus chapter 23, two verses 15 and 22. And here's what it says. From the day after the Sabbath, the day you bring the bundle of grain to be lifted up as a special offering, count off 7 full weeks. Keep counting until the day after the seventh Sabbath, 50 days later. Then present an offering of new grain to the Lord. When you harvest the crops of your land, do not harvest the grain along the edges of your fields. Do not pick up what the harvesters drop. Leave it for the poor and the foreigners living among you. I am the Lord your God. Okay, this is the day of the harvest, the festival of the harvest. This is when we bring in a lot of the grains. And in those days, of course, it's an agricultural society. When that day comes, it's really special because it means you're going to live. It means you're going to have sustenance for the next time period. It means you've been successful. And sometimes in the Old Testament, there were droughts and famines and insect invasions, and those things still happen today. Most of us don't live off of the land like this talks about. So they don't bother us too much, except the prices go up in the grocery stores, and then we fuss and fume because the prices went up. But here God is talking about a special time, a time of 50 days. And when that's up, he says, bring in your offering. Bring in the grain that you've collected and present it to God. See, being thankful to God for what you have is a central theme in the Bible. It's a particularly sensitive and central theme to the talk about the different festivals. And here, God wants us to acknowledge that He's the source of what we have, not something else. It says, bring them in and offer an offering to Him and have a great time. Now, this particular day, according to Exodus, was also the day that Moses brought the law down, the 12 tablets, the 10 commandments on the 2 tablets from the Mount of Sinai. So in the Old Testament, this day corresponded to the day when the law was presented. That God, of course, guided everybody's life. Now in the New Testament, this is the day that the Spirit arrives and casts Himself among all people. Up until that time in the New Testament, God's Spirit had come upon certain individuals for certain things. And when that thing was finished, that task or whatever, then the Spirit was removed and you waited for it to happen again. Pentecost in the New Testament says this is the day the Spirit comes on all people. You see a growing explanation of God in the festivals and in the fulfillment in the New Testament. Here, God's talking about recognizing He's the source of what you have. He's the one that should get the credit. Oh, I know you did the work, but He's the one that made it happen. It's kind of like me. As I've mentioned before, I have a lot of formal education, more than most people have. Don't really ask me why. It's a long story. But I realized over the time that while I actually did the work, writing the papers, reading the books, whatever, it wasn't my accomplishment. It was God's. Because He gave me the brain and the drive to be able to accomplish that. He is the source of who I am. And here He wants this festival to recognize, to declare to all the world that He is the source of the harvest. And then at the end of this, verse 22, He repeats what was said earlier in Leviticus 19 about taking care of the poor and the strangers. He doesn't want us to be selfish. Now, if what we have comes from us, then there'd be a tendency to think that I get to keep it. After all, I did it. It's mine. I I own it. What do you mean I have to share it? But if I'm not the owner of it, I'm just the caretaker, then why wouldn't I share? You see, you and I are the caretakers of the presence of God in this world. He wants us to think of others. Now, if you're one of those who doesn't think about God at all, okay, but then start thinking about you. You know, this world doesn't offer you much in terms of after you die. Oh, it can offer you a lot of really neat things right now. But then when you die, none of those things move along with you. Life is more than a harvest, than a great accomplishment. Life is providing God the grace and the recognition of who He is, and then sharing that with others. All of the festivals are designed to understand our place in the universe, our place in the kingdom, and to remember it's God's kingdom. It's not mine. And if I can get that in here and in here, then sharing it becomes really easy. So what are you doing about sharing the goodness and the grace of God? Well, you don't have to tell me. And since I'm looking into a screen, there's no way for you to tell me. But I would like you to think about, who is the center of your life? And what does it mean because of it? Thanks for listening. If you have a need or a concern, let us know. Seriously, let us know. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. Thanks so much for listening. I'll be back tomorrow. I got a couple more days left to talk about this incredible book, the book of Leviticus. God bless you. I'll talk to you again.